Great, thanks. So I'm Burnyeat from Communities Renewables, and I'm going to talk for 10 minutes about why would you want to take on that loan fund? What can it do for you? And I guess the key thing is, with a bit of investment and a bit of support, there is no insurmountable reason why Cornish communities can't generate their own energy at scale. And community scale doesn't need to mean small. For me, community scale is generation at a scale which makes a material contribution to a community's energy needs and indeed financial needs. So three examples. First is, it's not real yet, that's a photo montage. This is the proposed Laddock community wind turbine. It's a single 77 metre high, 500 kilowatt wind turbine. It could generate about a third of the parish's domestic and commercial needs. It would cost about 1.4 million to build it, and it would generate revenue of somewhere near 400,000 a year and about 80,000 a year surplus for the community. Next one is a 5 megawatt solar project in Oxfordshire, the West Mill solar project that was built last year. And that's quite an interesting story because it actually started off as a landowner project. The landowner then sold it to a commercial developer, but with the option that if a community co-op could come in once it had been built, the community co-op had the option to buy it off the commercial developer. And they did it, and the landowner himself actually set up a cooperative. That cooperative went and raised £5.8 million through a cooperative share offer, and they also raised another £12 million through a local authority bond investment. Interestingly, it wasn't Oxford, an Oxford local authority, it was Lancashire. So they raised 17 million in total. That's now the biggest 100% cooperatively owned solar farm in Europe. But it can get really big. This is Grundon offshore wind farm, which is up the coast of Copenhagen. That's one of the first offshore wind farms to be built, and generates about 4% of Copenhagen's power, and it's owned half by a municipal energy company and half by a cooperative of largely people from the city. So there's three basic ways that a community generation project can benefit the community, and between all those three ways they can benefit everyone. So firstly, people can invest in it and they'll earn a reasonable return on their investment, better than if they'd left their money in the bank. Secondly, there are ways of supplying the power generated to local consumers under arrangements which possibly save people money now, but definitely help protect people from future price rises. And at the moment those arrangements are all a bit interim, but I share Steve and Matt's view that in the next couple of years we'll have genuine local energy market arrangements, and local consumers will be able to realise the benefit of the fact that wind, solar, other forms of renewable generation generate energy at a long-term fixed known cost. You can't say that about fossil fuels. So yeah, local people can invest in it, they can buy the power, and lastly, it can generate income for the community. And it's what the community can do with that income, which is quite interesting. You can take that income and they can invest some of it back into more community generation, things like solar panels on people's roofs, things that save people money, not just by reducing their price, but by reducing the amount of energy that they're using, but also to give grants to local community organisations to help that community be more resilient as centralised funding gets pulled back. Now the surplus income that a genuine community project generates is very different to a community payment that comes from a commercial project. A community payment that comes from a commercial project is normally a fixed amount per megawatt that's paid every year. The community surplus from a genuine locally owned community project is all the money that's left after operating costs have been covered and investors have been paid a fair return. And it's quantitatively fundamentally different. So if you take an example, a 500 kilowatt wind turbine, I don't know what commercial developers are paying at the moment, but probably the really generous ones are paying £2,500 a year. The surplus income for the low carbon Laddock cooperative from the Laddock turbine would have been over £100,000 a year if we got it through first time. If we do get to build it sometime next year, it'll be 80,000 or so. Again, for a 5 megawatt solar project, community fund payments for megawatt scale solar have now come down to know what they're paying at the moment, Steve? A couple of grand per megawatt, a couple of grand, 10 grand for a 5 megawatt project per year, whereas the genuine community owned one could be generating 50 or possibly more. So back to the TEFRA grant. That first 20,000 grant fund is very useful, but in the grand scheme of things, medium to large scale projects can take hundreds of thousands to get through planning and get them to the stage where they're built. So 20,000 isn't very much money. And you could quite easily go to a big environmental consultancy and they would produce you a big fat report for £20,000, but it wouldn't actually get you anywhere. So what gets you somewhere? You do need to make sure you picked a good site, and you do need to make sure that you've met that you will meet the basic planning requirements, so you do need to do some feasibility work. But you need a land agreement. If you don't have an agreement with the landowner, you don't have a site, they could walk off. You need a grid connection offer. You need to have engaged the planners and spoken to them about it, and some of the key statutory consultees. You need to talk to your community, and you need to make sure you've got a robust business case. So there's some illustrative budgets there, and you'll see that if you add them all up, they come to more than 20,000. So you've got to be very careful about how you use that money. The other thing about the DEFRA Loan Fund is it's a fantastic facility. It is designed to address the key risk for community projects, and the key barrier. The key barrier for community projects is not the millions of pounds it takes to build it, it's the hundreds of thousands it takes to get it through planning and ready to raise the money to build it. And these are illustrative costs for a 5 megawatt solar project, and you'll see that the 150,000 from RAP, it might get you to planning, but it's not going to get you through the next stage. And it's certainly not going to cover you if you refuse planning and you have to go to appeal. So it enables you to secure the project for your community and to steer the direction it goes in, but you'll need some supplementary risk investment as well. And the plug for CFR, we can help with that supplementary risk investment, and we can also help you develop the project. But the key thing is we're not a developer, we don't own the projects we develop, we work on a consultancy basis. Where we put money into a project, we just pay that money back at construction stage. And the last point on the 45% interest rate, if a small project, say a 50 kilowatt turbine, was going to take on that loan, but you wouldn't need 150,000 to get planning for a 50 kilowatt turbine. So this is really aimed at 500 kilowatt turbines and megawatt scale projects, and 45% on 130 total. For a 5 megawatt solar project, that's less than 1% of the capital cost. It's not a huge burden. I think it's a very good value facility, and they have to allow for the fact that probably half the projects they fund will fall over. So if that pot of money is going to be sustained rather than deplete, they've got to charge a reasonable interest rate. That's it for me. But happy to take any questions on the loan fund as well, because I've spoken with David about it quite a lot.